The story begins with a lonely e-girl who rushes home just to play her favorite video game. And out of nowhere, Truck-kun appears, and I don't even have to say what happened next. You know how it goes. She wakes up in the body of a princess and immediately collapses on the floor. The servants shit their pants. They can see this rich princess firing their poor dirty asses over her own mistake. Apparently, she has that personality because that's when we learn she's been reincarnated into the very game she was rushing home to play when she met Truck-kun, and to top it off, she has been reincarnated as the evil princess named Pride, the final boss of the whole story. Truck-kun, you magnificent bastard, I love your humor because Pride is a psychotic bitch. In fact, she is the most brutal villain I have ever seen. She will drag the country into ruin 10 years later, murder dirty peasants, enslave people, conspire with evil organizations, and whatever is the most fucked up thing your brain can stitch together. That's until the actual protagonist eventually shows up to delete her from the game. Our MC, the reincarnated Pride, is determined to change that future. As she lies on her bed, her father, Albert, walks in to check on her and tells her that her mother has been worried sick. Her mother, Rosa, is the powerful queen of the country. She went out to get milk, and Pride has never seen her mother since, like never ever, because Queen Rosa is very busy for her daughter petty bickering, parenting right there. She asks Albert about her younger sister, already knowing her sister is the protagonist, Tiara. Albert is surprised she knows this and wonders how she found out, suspecting she has the same precognition ability that Queen Rosa possesses. Because of this, he starts seeing her as the rightful crown princess, but Pride knows this isn't how the scene was supposed to play out in the game. Albert tells her to get some rest before leaving the room, and Pride remembers that people in this kingdom can be born with special abilities. Precognition is one of the fancier rich ones, perfectly suited for a monarch, so anyone born with it is chosen to inherit the throne. Even in the game, her character had the ability, making her a worthy heir to the throne. But Pride knows that she is fucked, because as the game's final boss, she's destined to be convicted and executed in the end. She's aware of the other ending paths where either Tiara or Tiara's lover dies, but she refuses to let that happen because she knows Tiara and her love interests are cinnamon roll level good, while her character is evil incarnate Kim Jong-un. Suddenly she remembers something important, jumps out of bed, and asks the maids where her father went. They tell her he left to report to the queen, so she opens the window and calls out to Albert, warning him that he will die before ever reaching the queen. Albert makes this face, clearly he didn't hear her. So, she hops out of the window and onto the ledge to get his attention. The maids try to stop her, but she tells them not to interfere. Pride shouts to Albert that he shouldn't ride the carriage because one of the wheels is broken and it will cause an accident. Just then, a strong gust of wind hits her and she falls, but a servant manages to grab her just in time. The maids immediately start groveling and beg for forgiveness, and Pride suddenly remembers that the original Pride punished the maids harshly, even sentencing some to death with their families. The guilt hits her hard and she breaks down crying as she apologizes to them, leaving them completely shocked. Albert rushes back into the room asking if the servants did something to her, but she insists she's the one at fault and begs him not to punish them. Later that day, Albert tells her that she'll meet Tiara on her 6th birthday and that he'll meanwhile need to adopt a stepbro for her who will act as her assistant. The next day, as she walks around the castle, the servants whisper about how much she has changed as Pride silently thinks about denying everything because she has nothing in common with the Pride from the game. She also realizes that both of her parents are still alive, even though in the game they were supposed to be dead by this point in the story, which makes her think she actually has a chance to change this world's future. Albert then introduces her to her new younger brother-in-law, Stale, one of the game's original protagonists, explaining that he'll serve as her assistant. Stale has a teleportation ability, and he's wearing handcuffs to suppress it because he has tried to run away several times. Apparently Albert is such a brain-dead clown that he can't even tell the difference between kidnapping and adoption. Albert tells her that Stale will enter into a contract of subordination with her tomorrow, which will make the handcuffs unnecessary. Are you f***ing kidding me? Pride remembers how the in-game version of herself tricked Stale into signing a contract of slavery by offering him that if he signs the contract, he can meet his mother. This ended up giving her absolute control over him and effectively turning him into her slave. The thought worries her, making her fear that everything is following the original storyline and that she may not be able to change anything. That evening, she visits Stale's room and asks if he wants to see his mother. Stale becomes emotional when Pride shows him the key to his handcuffs, which she secretly swiped from Albert's desk. She's about to unlock them when Stale stops her, saying, "Step sis, I am stuck," because both he and his mother would be punished if he escapes. He explains that once the notice arrived, he had only 2 weeks left with his mother before being sent to the castle. He cried on the day they said goodbye, but at least he was able to give her a proper farewell. He's terrified that someone else would be taken away from their family if he escapes, and he doesn't want anyone else to suffer like he did, so he says he'll forget about his mother and simply serve Pride. Pride thinks he's such a good boy, and remembering how the original Pride manipulated him into killing his own mother makes her emotional. Yes, you heard that right? The original Pride ordered Stale to kill his own mother? One thing about the slavery contract in this world is that once you receive an order from your master, your body moves on its own, so Stale killed his own mother on Pride's order. His body moved on its own to kill the very mother he loved more than anyone else. That's seriously f***ed up. I told you this bitch was psychotic. Back to the present, Pride tells Stale to sleep well and quietly walks away. The following day, they sign the contract and Stale's handcuffs are removed. Albert welcomes him officially into the family. Stale tells Pride he looks forward to serving at her side and promises to protect her as he addresses her formally as the princess. Pride tells him he doesn't need to be so formal since they're family now, but Albert's assistant, Chancellor Gilbert, steps in to warn Stale to keep things formal in front of others. He also tells Pride she has become a proper vessel for a future queen now that her precognition ability has been recognized. Pride then takes Stale around the house, showing him the library and telling him he's free to use it whenever he wants. She later sees him holding a stack of books, but he suddenly collapses as his breathing turns heavy. Stale has caught a cold, and as he cries he starts remembering his mother. Pride realizes just how much he's been through and how hard he's been working to adapt to life in the castle. Thinking about how cruel her in-game self was to him which makes her emotional, and she starts crying too. Stale asks her what's wrong, and Pride hugs him, apologizing for not being able to help him the way she wants to, because all she really wants is for him to be with his mother. She promises she'll never hurt him and says she genuinely wants to make everyone smile, even telling Stale that if she ever becomes a horrible queen, he should kill her. Pride ends up falling asleep in his room while Stale quietly thinks about protecting her. Then we see a scene from the game where Stale tried to kill Pride after she forced him to kill his own mother. Pride mocks him, calling him a fool and telling him he can't kill her because he signed the contract of fealty. Stale demands to know what his mother ever did to deserve this, but Pride says she did nothing and she only wanted Stale to kill his mother for fun. Stale wants to die, but Pride orders him not to ever kill himself, trapping him even further. He falls to his knees while Pride laughs, and in that moment, he swears one day he will have his revenge. Back in the real world, Stale wakes up saying he had a dream but can't remember what it was. As he prepares for his next lecture, he notices he brought Pride's handkerchief with him. He remembers the moment they shared, and recalls the day his mother received the official notice. She cried when she read it, saying she didn't need the money, begging them not to take Stale away. Before they parted, his mother showed an expression that looked exactly like what he saw from Pride last night. Stale admits that when he first heard rumors about Pride's naive attitude, he thought he could manipulate her, knowing she would eventually become clean and easy to influence. With that plan in mind, he did everything he could to become the ideal assistant and a perfect regent, believing that if he won her favor, he could eventually change the country's rules. But he also remembers Pride telling him to kill her if she ever became a deplorable queen, and he wonders what she's so afraid of. Just then, Pride arrives and tells him to come with her because she has something to give him. She takes Stale to Albert, who says he made an exception for him as he hands Stale an envelope. Stale opens it and discovers a letter from his mother, who is thrilled she can now exchange letters with him and wishes him well. Overwhelmed, Stale bursts into tears, and Albert explains that this was all done at Pride's request. Albert also reveals that his mother will receive a fixed sum of money every month, and that she can send one letter per month, but Stale may only send one letter each year. Pride hugs him and tells him they all love him, and Stale wonders why Pride is so afraid of becoming a deplorable queen when she's already such a genuinely good person. Feeling indebted to her, he becomes determined to protect her with his life. Later, as Stale thinks about what to write in his letter, he overhears people talking about Pride's supposed selfishness. He looks out the window but can't see or hear them well, so he uses his teleportation ability and hides behind a bush to eavesdrop properly and to check who is talking shit behind Pride's back. He sees Chancellor Gilbert with a group of men, trash-talking Pride, to be specific, saying that Pride treats Stale poorly and Stale is already tired of her looking down on him. Stale knows that's a lie, and it becomes clear Gilbert is spreading the rumors to make people question whether Pride is fit to inherit the throne. Stale returns to his room planning to report this, but he thinks no one will believe him as he is now. He realizes he needs more than courage. He'll have to be smarter and craftier than anyone else if he wants to earn even more trust than Gilbert has. He throws himself into improving, wanting to become someone the whole nation would admire so he can protect Pride from these scheming adults. At this point, Stale is completely loyal to her and refuses to allow anyone but Pride to become queen. Meanwhile, Rosa tells Tiara she will meet Pride and Stale at her birthday celebration tomorrow. Tiara becomes nervous, unsure if they'll like her. The next day, nobles gather for Tiara's birthday celebration and applaud as Pride and Stale make their entrance. Stale introduces himself to Rosa, saying it's an honor to be part of their family and promising to serve Pride as the next regent, earning the nobles' admiration. Albert and Tiara then make their entrance, and Pride remembers that Tiara is supposed to join her love interests to overthrow Pride's character in the game, acting as the only light for the country during Pride's brutal rule. The nobles start saying, "Tiara looked beautiful, just like Queen Rosa," and Pride suddenly feels jealous because none of them have ever said that about her. She agrees with the nobles, admitting Tiara really is adorable, and even though a bit of jealousy stings, she's still fully determined not to bully her the way the original Pride would have. Albert introduces Tiara to her siblings, and Pride genuinely looks forward to getting to know her. Tiara happily calls her big sister, and Pride finds her so cute that it almost feels scripted. Stale introduces himself next, saying it's an honor to become her older brother, but Pride quickly notices he isn't addressing her by her title like he did to her when they first met. He clearly planned this, wanting to show everyone that he's proud to stand beside Pride as the future queen. Stale then tells Tiara that he and Tiara should do everything to help Pride as the future queen, and Tiara immediately agrees to work with him to support Pride. The nobles eat this up, thrilled to see the siblings united, and Pride realizes that Stale intentionally made his move so the entire kingdom would recognize her as the future queen. The siblings join hands, and Pride boldly declares that they will protect the country and its people, earning loud applause from the nobles. Rosa reminds Pride not to forget this moment and tells her they have high expectations of her. Then Rosa announces publicly that Pride's precognition ability has fully awakened, officially recognizing her as the next in line to the throne. After that, Gilbert approaches, telling them they've completely charmed everyone today. He compliments Tiara's appearance and says it's a shame she didn't awaken precognition, because she could have been queen instead, until Stale cuts him off, asking what exactly he means by that. Gilbert casually admits he was being rude and comments on how much Stale has changed, saying he almost looks like a member of the royal family now. He brings up Stale's commoner background, but Stale interrupts with a polite, passive-aggressive reminder that he owes everything to Pride and intends to keep serving her alongside Tiara. Gilbert then turns to Pride and asks for her thoughts about the country's political landscape and the other people born with the same ability. Before Pride has to answer, Albert smacks Gilbert on the head and drags him away. Pride casually mentions that Stale reminds her of Gilbert, which is such a devastating comparison that Stale practically collapses into despair on the spot because Gilbert is the last person he wants to resemble. Rosa and Albert speak afterward about Pride's recent changes. Rosa admits she used to have terrible premonitions about Pride's future, but she no longer sees those outcomes because Pride has changed so drastically. So, she knew her daughter was a horrible human being, and she did nothing to improve it. No wonder original Pride was such a cruel person. It's all because of her mother anyways. Rosa also notes that it's only been a month since Stale joined the family, yet he's already willing to go incredibly far for her. Then Commander Roderick approaches Pride, saying he was deeply moved by her speech and congratulating her on being named the future queen. He tells her he wants her to meet his son someday, and Pride politely says she looks forward to it. Rosa comments that the future seems to be shifting, but Albert reassures her that Pride will grow into a wonderful queen. After the event ends, Pride goes outside and stares up at the sky, swearing that in 10 years she will do everything in her power to protect the country and its people. The next day, as Stale trains his sword in the garden, he becomes flustered and unfocused when he overhears Tiara saying if Pride will eventually marry Stale. It turns out it's common for adopted siblings to marry into the family, but the idea throws him completely off, literally. The girls rush over to check on him, and we learn that Stale developed feelings for Tiara in the game, so Pride wonders if that's already starting to happen here too. Pride thinks about how much this world has changed already, but decides to test one more thing just to make sure. She spars with the instructor, and despite this being the first time she's ever picked up a sword, her movement and technique is flawless, and she effortlessly claps the instructor. Just by watching, she can already mimic and master self-defense techniques, making her realize she still has those overpowered cheat abilities that made her the final boss. Stale is stunned by how strong she is and immediately feels useless, but Pride tells him not to get discouraged, saying she's certain he'll one day surpass her. He returns to training with renewed determination, but after this test, Pride can't shake the feeling that her destiny might still be tied to the original storyline of the game. Even so, she hopes she'll be able to live out her days together with Stale and Tiara. Pride goes to observe the Royal Knights next. The vice captain, Clark, greets her, and Pride wonders why the captain isn't present. Clark explains that the captain was called away for a joint military exercise with a neighboring country. Stale thinks it's disrespectful for the captain to be absent during Pride's first observation, but Pride brushes it off, saying she's sure the knights will still perform wonderfully even without him. She watches them train and is genuinely impressed by their skill, though she can't help remembering how her in-game self used all these knights for her own selfish schemes. Just then, a knight runs up to Clark, reporting that the captain's group has been attacked on their way to the neighboring country. Clark insists that they should get Pride to safety first, but she refuses, insisting on overseeing the operation directly. They head into the conference room, where Captain Roderick is already reporting the situation. Stale casually mentions that they're even able to communicate right now thanks to one of the knight's abilities, which honestly feels like a very convenient skill no one ever talks about until moments like this. We see Roderick surrounded on all sides, but he reports that, somehow, they haven't taken any casualties yet. Clark tells him reinforcements are on the way, but they're still about 30 minutes out. Roderick isn't sure they can last that long because their ammunition is already running low. That's when Pride steps forward with a plan. She explains that Stale can teleport anything around his own body weight as long as he has clear coordinates, so she tells everyone to start preparing supplies they can send over. We see Stale teleporting the crates, and Roderick's men instantly get their morale back like someone just handed them hope in a wooden box. The captain can't believe Stale hid such an ability this whole time, and one of the knights, thinking a little too creatively, suggests dropping bombs on their enemies. Roderick immediately shuts him down, calling him disrespectful. Stale says he doesn't mind if Pride orders it, but she firmly tells him to never do something like that. Clark apologizes for his man, and Pride reminds them all to keep Stale's ability a secret because she doesn't want him turned into a tool for war. She wants him to use his power for himself and to protect the things he personally values. A soldier then reports that the reinforcements are 10 minutes away. Clark orders half of them to support Roderick, while the other half circle around to apprehend the enemy on the clifftop. Roderick warns them to watch their footing since the ground in that area is unstable. But that word, unstable, triggers something in Pride's memory from the game, and she suddenly warns everyone not to go up to the clifftop. She claims she had a premonition that the whole area will crumble. Using her authority as Crown Princess, she orders a full retreat. The men rush off to spread the message, but we soon learn that Roderick himself is stuck near the cliff because his leg is pinned by a fallen boulder. He even tries to cut off his own leg to escape, but he fails because his ability/nullification makes him immune to swords or knife. Basically, his body can't be cut using any sharp object. Which is great, except for moments like this when he actually wants to be cut. Roderick thinks this is the end for him, but his son suddenly appears, calling him a terrible father and demanding he stay alive for his mother's sake. Roderick gets surrounded by the enemy and prepares to go down swinging. Pride feels helpless at first, thinking there's nothing she can do, but then she notices a certain man among the enemies. The enemies rush him and he fights them off, but the moment they realize guns actually work on him, they open fire. Roderick's son collapses in despair, begging anyone to save his father, but Pride steps in and assures him she'll protect everyone in her country. She tells Stale to teleport her to the battlefield. He hesitates, thinking it's too dangerous, but she tells him to trust her, so he finally teleports her away. Just as the enemy is about to finish Roderick off, they suddenly get shot at, and Pride makes her dramatic entrance. She jumps down the cliff, telling the enemies to prepare themselves, while Roderick panics and tells her to run away. Pride insists that he's one of her citizens and that protecting him is her duty. She charges in and starts taking enemies out one after another, and Roderick can't believe she's really just an 11-year-old girl doing all this. 3 men rush her at once, but she leaps over them and takes them all down like it's nothing. The surviving enemies try to retreat, but she grabs a gun and shoots at them, leaving them convinced they're fighting some kind of monster. The cliff begins crumbling beneath them, but Pride manages to catch the man she noticed earlier. She tells Roderick to grab onto him, warning that they'll all die if he doesn't use his ability right now. The cliff is about to collapse on top of them. We cut to a scene from the game where Roderick's son watches helplessly as his father is killed. Clark orders his knights to search for survivors while he mourns Roderick's death. Pride mocks the fallen captain, calling his death pathetic. Clark tells her that Roderick sacrificed himself to help the others escape, but Pride says it doesn't matter because those people died anyway. She doesn't even care about the casualties, saying she can always recruit new knights, and she appoints Clark as the new captain on the spot. Roderick's son knows she foresaw the tragedy because she smiled at his before the cliff collapsed, but she still let everyone die, and the anger he feels turns into the starting point of his desire for revenge against Pride. He knows he can't do anything in his current state, so he decides he's going to become a knight just like his father. With that resolve, he cuts his hair short, determined to one day bring Pride to justice. Back in the present, the cliff collapses over Pride and Roderick, killing them both on the spot. And that's where this story ends. Everyone just stands there stunned. Stale is absolutely shattered. Pride died before ever uttering the sacred 4-word miracle. Step bro, I'm stuck. Obviously, that part was a joke, the dying under the rubble part. Someone finally notices a strange rock formation jutting out from the rubble. It begins to crumble, and to everyone's relief, both Pride and Roderick make it out alive. The knights are overjoyed that their captain survived, and Pride immediately orders them to secure the enemy before tending to Roderick's injuries. The knights start whispering about who she even is, so Roderick tells them that she's the princess, leaving them all stunned. Back in the conference room, they receive a report confirming 0 casualties, and the entire room lights up in relief. But Stale quietly realizes he teleported Pride directly into danger, unable to protect her once she arrived. Roderick tells Pride she needs to return to the castle immediately, informing her that the vanguard has arrived to escort her. He says there are many things he wishes to discuss with her, so he asks her to arrange a meeting. They return to the castle, and Pride gathers the knights for a meeting. She encourages them to speak freely and thanks them for keeping her involvement a secret. Roderick asks how she figured out their enemy was a special ability user, and she claims it was because of her precognition ability, even though it was actually her game knowledge guiding her the whole time. Roderick then asks why she jumped into the fight alone, saying she should have alerted the other knights before acting. Pride explains that there wasn't enough time, and, considering the limitations of Stale's ability, she was the only one who could reach the battlefield fast enough. Roderick becomes upset, insisting she shouldn't have entered the front lines at all, even if no one could have saved him. He tells her she should have contacted the knights and left everything to them. Pride tries to explain the consequences of not intervening, but he cuts her off, reminding her that knights willingly give their lives for their country. He claims her actions almost disgrace the entire Knight Order, and if she had died, she could have plunged the whole nation into despair. Pride realizes he does have a point, especially knowing he was prepared for an honorable death, but she also thinks about Roderick's son and how devastated he would have been. Roderick continues, lecturing her about the value of her life, telling her she is far more important than all of them, so she shouldn't risk herself for their sake. Pride demands silence and acknowledges that he's correct about the trouble her actions caused, but she reminds him that she didn't just save him, she also saved the knights who will eventually serve under his command. She explains that these knights will someday save countless others because they are the ones protecting the people directly. She tells the knights that their lives are incredibly important, and if they die needlessly chasing some idea of an honorable death, then there will be no one left to protect their citizens. She urges them to forget about dying gloriously and think instead about saving the countrymen depending on them. Pride then tells Roderick that he doesn't understand his own worth, reminding him of all the people around him who give their hearts to him. She says that even if he had been just an ordinary soldier, she would have done the exact same thing. She wants to save people whenever she can, and as the first princess, she lives for the sake of her people, meaning she won't allow even a single meaningless death on her watch. Still, Pride acknowledges that her actions put the knights in a difficult position, and she sincerely apologizes for it. Clark speaks up next, saying he doesn't approve of the royal family getting involved in the incident, but he thanks her deeply for saving the knights. He bows before her, expressing his gratitude for saving Roderick, knowing Roderick would have died without her intervention. The other knights follow his lead, thanking Pride for saving their captain. Roderick's son steps forward and thanks her as well. He reveals he's a special ability user, though he always believed his power wasn't useful, so he gave up on becoming a knight. But seeing his father's life on the line made him regret not pursuing that path, and he breaks down in tears as he asks Pride if he can still become a knight like his father. Pride tells him he absolutely can, reassuring him that he has her full support. She tells him that the kindness he showed for his family and his desire to grow stronger are exactly what make a true knight. She encourages him to protect everyone once he becomes one, and he grabs her hands, promising to protect her with his life. Pride gently asks for his name, and he introduces himself as Arthur Beresford. Pride is stunned when she hears this, realizing he's actually one of the love interests in the game. She remembers that Arthur becomes the captain of the knights, and is the only one with the sword skills capable of overpowering her character. Pride then tells Arthur she has foreseen his future, saying he's sure to become an honorable knight. But remembering how evil her original character becomes, she orders him to kill her if she ever becomes an enemy of the country. Roderick suddenly drops to his knees, bursting into tears as he thanks Pride for saving his life. He says he's overjoyed to see everyone again, and hearing his son declare his desire to become a knight fills him with happiness. Pride is relieved he survived, but Arthur is still thinking about her words, wondering why she told him something so heavy. He silently vows to protect her no matter what, even if the entire world turns against her, and he resolves to make sure she never strays from the right path. We get a glimpse into his childhood, where he once dreamed of becoming a knight just like his father. But when his special ability turned out to be something more suited for farming, he became the target of pity. His parents were thrilled that he inherited an ability at all, but everyone else saw it as useless for a knight, and no matter how hard he trained, it never evolved into anything more. Eventually, he gave up on knighthood entirely and considered becoming a farmer instead. But after meeting Pride, all of that changed. His determination returns, and he starts training with his father again, even asking to hear more about the princess. He lunges in with a serious attack, but ends up getting knocked back, though Roderick is genuinely impressed, thinking Arthur might even surpass him in talent. Arthur's mother arrives, confused by the commotion, and is surprised to learn her son wants to become a knight again. Pride, meanwhile, thinks about Arthur and recalls that in the game's original storyline, Roderick died at the cliff incident. That tragedy causes Arthur to hate Pride's character for sacrificing his father so casually, vowing revenge. But now she's relieved she was able to change that future and inspire Arthur instead. Pride decides to visit the knights, telling Clark she has something to return to the captain. The moment the knights hear she's visiting, they swarm toward her. She's basically become their celebrity after the last mission. Roderick rushes in as well, and Pride immediately notices a bruise on his head. Clark explains that they were drinking all night, and after training with Arthur that morning, Roderick ended up with a minor accident. Pride is happy to hear Arthur has already started training again, and Roderick mentions that Arthur was asking about her. Right on cue, Arthur arrives carrying Roderick's sword, and he freezes when he notices Pride, instantly embarrassed. The surrounding knights grin at him like he's their little brother, and he quickly tries to escape the situation. Clark knows Arthur clearly has something he wants to say to Pride, but Arthur insists he'll tell her after he actually becomes a knight. Before he can slip away, Stale invites him to join his training, saying he could use a partner, and Arthur agrees. Stale brings him to their training room, but as they talk, Arthur can't help but find Stale's cheerful smile deeply suspicious, unsure what he's planning. Stale tells him not to be formal and to treat him like a friend. As they start sparring, Stale is surprised by Arthur's skill and wonders if he really took that much time off. Arthur insists he hasn't touched a sword in years, but his movements suggest otherwise. Stale tells him he should try out for the knights, shocking Arthur, who still thinks of himself as a beginner. He believes he'd need at least 3 years to prepare, but Stale insists he's already ready and even offers to help him however he can. Arthur wonders why Stale is pushing him so hard, and Stale explains it plainly. It's because he wants Arthur to protect Pride. Even though Pride is strong, Stale worries she'll keep doing reckless things in the future. He trains to protect her himself, but deep down, he knows he alone isn't enough. He recognizes how strong Arthur will eventually become, so he wants Arthur to be the one who stands at her side. Stale wants to become her shield, and he tells Arthur to become her sword. Arthur accepts this and agrees to work together for Pride's sake. The two start getting along, and Arthur casually tells Stale that his smile actually creeps him out. Stale's shocked, and Arthur explains that's why he thought he was plotting something earlier. They start messing around during practice, and Stale is genuinely glad to have met him. Meanwhile, Pride sits alone reading about the laws of the country. She remembers how her in-game counterpart abused those very laws to commit atrocities, and she's determined to make sure she never goes down that same twisted path. Pride arrives in the throne room where Gilbert informs her that the man she captured is tied to the disappearance of knights from an allied kingdom. He explains that this man set up an ambush after extracting information from the knights he had been keeping in captivity. Rosa, knowing Pride has been studying the laws of the country, wants her to deliver the judgment herself as the future queen. The criminal is brought in, and Pride remembers his name, Val. The same Val, her villainous game version once hired to fight Tiara. We learn that the captured knights are still alive, but their location is only known to Val, so they need him to guide them. Rosa wants Pride to say out loud what she's thinking as she passes judgment, making this a sort of public princess exam. Pride announces that Val has committed a serious crime, and her honest first thought is that he deserves execution, but since they still need him alive to rescue the knights, she considers using a fealty contract instead. She orders the knights to remove Val's gag and approaches him, asking how he would like to be punished. She calmly explains that life under a fealty contract strips a person of their free will, basically becoming her slave, so depending on how things go, he might end up suffering a fate worse than death. Val immediately says he does not want to die, so Pride decides she'll release him after he serves the contract. Rosa instructs her to carry out the contract, and Pride signs it, though she worries that she's creeping down the same path as her villainous game counterpart. Val signs as well, activating the contract, and Pride gives him his orders. He's to serve the royal family and live an honest, non-violent life moving forward. After some time passes, Stale reports that the knights have been rescued. Pride approaches Val and tells him to speak his mind. He calls her a monster like a gigachad, which makes Stale furious, but Pride decides to release Val anyway, leaving him with 2 final orders. The first is to protect Tiara in an emergency. Everyone is stunned, but Pride insists that it's a top priority, and Val may disobey any other order for Tiara's sake. The second order is that he must return to her if he ever needs help. With that, she sets him free and orders him to leave the castle. His legs start moving on their own under the contract's influence, and as he walks away, he asks why she's doing all this. Pride admits it might just be based on unfounded fear, and the guards escort him out. Tiara wonders aloud if she's a burden, thinking Pride asked Val to protect her because she must be weak. Pride reassures her that she loves her and simply wants to protect what she loves, a weak fucking kid. She adds that she loves Stale too, and wants to be his older sister until the very end. Soon it's almost time for the knighthood exam, and they meet up with Arthur. Pride announces that they'll be watching him train every day, confident that their presence will motivate him, if not inspire him, then at least annoy him into better performance. Stale and Arthur spar, and after a few days the boys continue their training while Pride and Tiara pick flowers. The sisters present the flowers to the boys, with Tiara revealing that Pride chose them. She explains the meanings. Stale's flowers symbolize intelligence, success, and gooning, while Arthur's represent heroism, strength, and dumbassery. She places them on their heads and admits that the flowers actually suit them, but the time for Arthur's knighthood exam finally arrives. He bids them farewell and heads outside. 2 years pass, and we see Arthur walking to the throne where he kneels before Pride, now officially becoming a knight. After the ceremony, Stale asks him about Gilbert, who kept bothering him during the event, but Arthur reveals they were talking about a rare and uncommon special ability. Arthur gives Stale a box containing glasses, and when Stale tries them on, the sisters hesitantly tell him he looks great. Meanwhile, Gilbert is bothering Pride about his proposal when Albert steps in, shuts it down, and drags him away. Pride explains that Gilbert is pushing for a special ability registration law that would require citizens to report their powers, which she opposes because she feels it violates human rights. Leaders caring about human rights? That's unheard of in our world. Stale warns her to be cautious around Gilbert. We learn that Stale can now teleport more than just his own weight, so Pride orders him to take them to Gilbert's location. He teleports them to the entrance of a room where they overhear Gilbert arguing with Albert. Gilbert is frustrated because although everyone handles Pride-related matters quickly, they still haven't fulfilled the promise made to him even after 7 years. Albert tells him he understands his struggles, but Gilbert snaps, insisting that Albert could never understand. His fiancée Maria is dying, and he needs someone with a special ability who can cure her illness. Then we see a scene from the game where Gilbert asks Pride what she's done to him. She tells him he's stuck as an old man because he asked her to enact a law granting her absolute control over all rare special abilities. He did it thinking the law would help him save Maria, but he breaks down, realizing that everything that happened was ultimately his fault. Back in the present, Pride finally remembers who Gilbert truly is. It turns out he was actually a secret character in the game all along, but she never recognized him because, well, his appearance looks nothing like the version she knew. We learn that his fiancée suffers from an incurable disease, so he once begged her villainous game version for help. She agreed, but only in exchange for 5 years of his labor, and he accepted because he was desperate. But the day after she enacted the law he requested, Maria died, and Pride's game self immediately used the law to force all special ability users into subordination or death. Gilbert was so crushed by guilt that he literally couldn't maintain his appearance as a young adult anymore. Pride realizes that in the original timeline, Maria dies just a few weeks after the law is passed, and since a law takes weeks to be enacted, that means today might be the exact day it happened. They see Albert ordering guards to search the castle, so Pride goes over and asks what's going on. He reveals that Gilbert is missing. They head to a room where Stale explains the situation to Tiara, and Pride remembers that her game self never listened to anyone when deciding executions during wartime. That makes her realize her character could have enacted the law instantly, without waiting, which means Maria's death might be happening right now. She and Stale rush to change clothes and head out. We cut to Gilbert, who is now with a group of thugs. He promises to pay them if they can find someone with the ability to cure illness, but the men laugh at him, insisting that such an ability doesn't exist. He's ready to walk away, but the thugs jump him anyway. Gilbert fights back surprisingly well. Apparently, eternal youth doesn't stop you from throwing hands. But one of the thugs grabs him, and he's about to be stabbed when Pride and Stale arrive just in time to help take them down. Pride tells Gilbert she had a premonition and that Maria is about to die. We then flash back to Gilbert's past. One day, he meets Maria, who has snuck out of her room. Her health had been declining for a long time, so she was confined indoors, and she tells him he's the first person she has ever met besides the palace staff. She asks him to take her somewhere she can see more of the world, and he takes her to a spot overlooking the city. Maria says it's the most beautiful sight she's ever seen, and he tells her he'll bring her there anytime she wants. She agrees happily, and from that point on, she becomes the reason he changes his entire life. But one evening, Maria tells him she has a fiancé. Gilbert breaks down and cries, but she tells him she loves him, and she kisses him. She asks him to keep seeing her until she turns 16, because that's when she'll be married. Gilbert awakens his ability, Eternal Youth, which lets him manipulate his own lifespan. He tells Maria he won't see her for a while but promises he'll come back. He dedicates himself to studying, works hard, and eventually becomes Albert's advisor, rising all the way to the role of Chancellor. He returns to Maria and boldly asks her to marry him, and she accepts, hugging him with genuine joy. His life finally feels perfect, until one day, Maria collapses from her illness. She tells him to live a good life if she dies, but he vows to save her no matter what it takes. Back in the present, Stale threatens Gilbert, since he knows Gilbert committed multiple crimes to try to save Maria, but Pride stops him and reminds him that Gilbert is still her subject. She and Stale start heading back to the palace when Gilbert suddenly calls after her, begging her for help. Pride chooses to trust him and decides they'll help too. She orders Stale to teleport her to Arthur, while he goes with Gilbert to Maria's room. Pride finds Arthur and explains she wants to save someone, but warns him that his life will change if he agrees to help. Arthur tells her it's fine. She already changed his life long ago and says he's willing to die for her if it comes to that. Stale arrives again, but now he looks like a grown man, which throws Pride off for a second. He tells her there's no time to explain and teleports them all to Maria's room where she's on the verge of death. Pride orders Arthur to place his hands on Maria, revealing that his ability is to heal all of creation. The moment he touches her, a bright light fills the room and Maria's condition immediately improves. She thanks Arthur for saving her, and Pride quietly notes that he wasn't supposed to awaken or even know about this ability yet, meaning she has successfully thrown the story off its original script again. She thanks Stale for helping her and asks why he suddenly looks like an adult. He admits that Gilbert transformed him into a grown man to help him move faster. Someone tell him, being grown up ain't no fun. Gilbert bows deeply and expresses his gratitude. He confesses that he's committed unforgivable acts in his desperation to save Maria and says he's prepared to accept whatever punishment Pride chooses. Pride tells him she can't excuse what he's done, but she also won't destroy him. Instead, she instructs him to confess everything to her parents. She orders the maids to forget what they've just witnessed and commands Gilbert to swear an oath to work for the people and continue serving as the nation's chancellor until the day he dies. He starts crying as Pride recalls that Gilbert once promised Tiara that he would protect the people at the end of the game. Feeling the weight of that memory, Gilbert makes the oath and pledges allegiance to her, vowing never to forget the kindness she displayed. That evening, Arthur shares that the knights have learned about his abilities. Stale wonders if he still wants to pursue knighthood, since his newfound skills open more lucrative opportunities, but Arthur insists that he wants to keep his position as a knight. The two begin talking about Pride, both of them silently agreeing that it's unfair how easily she let Gilbert off. At a royal banquet, Stale complains about Gilbert again, but Tiara assumes he's just jealous. Gilbert, aware that Stale dislikes him, takes it as a challenge and formally announces that he will be marrying Maria. Meanwhile, the arena hosts the knights' competition for the position of Imperial Guard. Arthur dominates the battlefield, effortlessly defeating all challengers and earns the title. While riding back in the carriage, the group discusses how fierce the competition was. Apparently, everyone gave their absolute best except Roderick and Clark, who sat the event out. Pride thinks about giving the knights a raise when the carriage suddenly stops. A man is blocking their path, and she immediately recognizes him as Val, rushing over to check on him. Later, Val regains consciousness at the castle. He's about to disrespect Pride, but the fealty contract she imposed compels him to his knees, preventing him from acting out. Pride is momentarily puzzled by his compliance, and he explains that the contract forced him to return to her. She remembers she ordered him to come if he ever needed help, so she asks what he requires. At first, Val refuses to reveal anything, but the contract forces him to speak the truth. He asks Pride to help the children, Kemen and Sefik, who have been taken by human traffickers. Pride recalls that he cannot use violence, which means he can't save the children alone. She places him under house arrest but tells him she will help, explaining that human trafficking is illegal and it's her duty to aid those in need. When they later visit Val in his room, they find a mess. Pride gives him a meal, but he immediately throws the knife panic spreads through the room, but it turns out he was just aiming at a spider. After the meal, Pride orders him to bed, emphasizing that he needs to be in top condition to save the children. Val protests, claiming he doesn't need their help and that the kids aren't important to him. Tiara wonders why he wants to save them, and Val explains that they make his life comfortable. Pride speculates that he might be using the children for his own purposes. I don't like where this is going. Val tells them to leave him alone, so Pride hugs Tiara to comfort her, sensing her fear. Pride knows that Tiara is sensitive to the suffering of others, reasoning there must be a reason she spoke to Val. She instructs the others to watch over Tiara while she stays with Val a little longer, assuring herself that she is now his master. Pride tells Val they will rescue the children in the morning, but he insists he doesn't need assistance. She probes him further, asking about the children, and he reveals that they had been following him everywhere because they believe he will protect them. She asks what they are like, and he explains that both are special ability users. Kemen, he says, has no purpose of his own, so he clings to others, while Sefik always watches over him, acting as a big sister even though they are not related by blood. Val knows that Sefik can blast people away with water like a waterbender, but he doesn't know Kemen's ability. He explains that following him was her idea, and he taught the children about money, but he starts pounding the wall, saying he's beginning to feel sick again. Pride asks him what he values most in life, and he claims he only values money. Not satisfied, Pride digs deeper, asking if there is anyone precious to him. Val insists he doesn't care about anyone, but Pride presses, asking how he would feel if Kemen and Sefik died. Val grows upset, feeling a strange ache in his heart. He can't understand why thinking about the children causes him so much pain, and he starts punching the floor, muttering that he can't stop worrying about them. He blames Pride for everything, claiming she should have just killed him to spare him this suffering. Confused and teary, Val bursts into tears. Pride tells him that he simply doesn't understand his emotions, much like my dad. She hugs him gently, telling him not to push her away, explaining that his suffering is a form of punishment. She teaches him about emotions, saying that his sickness comes from worry for the children, and his tears are proof that they have become like a family to him. Val confronts the human traffickers, but they refuse to release Kemen and Sefik, demanding 5 children in exchange. He protests that he himself counts as the 5th, but they scoff, deeming him worthless until he reveals his ability, forcing them to reconsider. Val commands them to release Kemen and Sefik, but the traffickers try to restrain him, insisting they will never relinquish their merchandise. Val and the children are thrown into a carriage, and it's revealed that the 4 other kids are actually Pride and the others in disguise. Before confronting the traffickers, Pride and the team devised the plan they would infiltrate the enemy base, allowing the knights to eliminate the traffickers once the prisoners were safe. Gilbert transforms them into children and gives them alternate identities. At the enemy base, Stale removes his restraints. The guards are startled and try to capture him, but they are instantly sent to a holding cell where the knights begin interrogating them about the location of the base. Meanwhile, the traffickers have separated the special ability users from the ordinary kids. Arthur, Gilbert, and Pride join the ordinary children in a cell, hearing a girl calling out for Val. Pride realizes that these must be Kemen and Sefik. She approaches them, trying to explain that they are Val's friends, though she initially doesn't believe it. After all, Val isn't known for having friends. Sefik scolds Val, calling him an idiot for being captured, knowing the traffickers would never release their merchandise willingly. Gilbert explains that Val has gone to the special ability user prison to search for her. Stale notices that Kemen and Sefik haven't been found yet and suspects they are hiding their abilities. He sees flashes in the distance, while Val guesses that a special ability user is responsible. A guard spots them, but Stale deletes him away, assuring that the knights will arrive soon. Val detonates a bomb, drawing the attention of other guards, and traps them using his earthbending. Arthur assumes the special ability users have been rescued, but Sefik worries about Val and blasts a guard away to protect him. Stale enters the special cell and sees a boy lying on the ground. He removes his restraints, and the boy wakes up, introducing himself as Powell. Stale tells him he can return home, preparing to teleport him, but lightning suddenly shoots from Powell's body. He insists he cannot go home, believing he only brings misery to others. Thor, is that you? Stale realizes Powell's ability is out of control but steps forward, explaining that he too is a special ability user. He tells Powell about Pride, saying that the country will change under her reign and promising to help him find a place to belong. The lightning continues to surge, injuring Powell, but Stale holds him steady until Powell disables the ability himself, finally starting to cry as he is teleported to safety. Stale collapses from his injuries, thinking about returning to Pride. The knights arrive at the location. Alan notices Arthur and asks why he is there. Arthur hides Pride, instructing the knights to back him up while he charges at the enemy. Arthur runs with Pride, but Alan catches up and recognizes her. Arthur quickly claims he is mistaken. The human traffickers capture Val and Stale, preparing to interrogate them, but Gilbert suddenly appears, frightening the enemy leader and announcing that the knights have arrived. Gilbert taunts the leader but is shot in the arm. Seeing Gilbert attacked, Arthur charges at the enemies, targeting the leader. Alan orders the knights to engage. Arthur slices through the guards, but the leader takes Val hostage, threatening to kill him. Arthur halts, restrained by the threat. Pride is returned to her original form by Gilbert. She steps in, slicing the chains holding Arthur and freeing him, ready to face the enemies herself. The enemy leader lunges at Pride, but she shatters his chains with ease, causing him to panic. He tries to shoot her, but she effortlessly slices through the bullets mid-air like some Bollywood character. Not wanting to soil her hands, she tosses her sword to Alan, who delivers the finishing blow, finally ending the immediate threat. It seems the ordeal is over, but a sudden explosion shakes the area. An airship begins bombing the surroundings. Everyone rushes for the exit, only to realize that Kemen and Sefik are still trapped inside. Val finds Sefik, but she tells him that Kemen is stuck. He desperately tries to save Kemen with his ability, but his strength isn't enough as the cave threatens to collapse. Pride and Arthur leap in to help, working together to rescue Kemen. Val spots him through a narrow opening, but the cave continues to crumble. The knights try to convince Val to leave, but he refuses, reminding them that he's a criminal and they don't need to risk themselves for him. Pride and Arthur retreat with Sefik, who asks anxiously about Val and Kemen. Arthur explains that they're still inside. Sefik starts to go back, but a sudden movement stops her, and she uses her water ability to hold off the threat. Gilbert arrives at a realization, prompting Pride to return to Val's side and order him to remove the wall blocking their path. Thal, one of the knights, is confused, but Pride instructs him to grab Kemen's hand. Though doubtful he can pull the boy out, the moment Kemen takes his hand, Pride orders Thal to control the entire cave. Overwhelmed, he suddenly channels a massive surge of power, reshaping the collapsing cavern and reuniting with Kemen. Gilbert deduces that Kemen's ability amplifies the power of those around him, explaining why Sefik had been weaker when she squirted the guards. Val, initially incredulous, begins using his hand to manipulate the cave, creating a moving platform that allows everyone to escape safely. Sefik is overjoyed to see Kemen, but an invisible man watches them from the airship above. Bombs rain down from the ship. Sefik nearly falls off a cliff, but Val swoops in, taking the fall himself. For the first time, he reflects on his life, never imagining he would risk himself for a child. A flashback shows his harsh past, abandoned by his mother at 7, forced to survive through violence and eventually joining a criminal group. Pride captured him, forced him into a fealty contract, and set him free, altering the course of his life. Back in his town, Val discovers Kemen and Sefik being harassed by other children. Though he initially ignores them, they cling to him, trusting him to keep them safe. His attempts to push them away fail due to the contract forbidding violence, so over months he adapts to their presence, teaching and caring for them. Sefik eventually starts a water selling business, deepening their bond as they look after each other. One day, the human traffickers capture the kids again, demanding 5 children in exchange for Kemen and Sefik. Val wants to retaliate but is restrained by the contract. He remembers he can return to Pride for help. In the present, Val accepts his role, content that he was able to save the children. Pride catches up to him, grabs his hand, and calls for Stale, who regains consciousness and teleports them all to safety. Kemen and Sefik, believing Val has fallen, cry, only to be overjoyed when he appears behind them unharmed. The next day, Arthur warns Pride that the culprit behind the bombing has yet to be caught. Val arrives with the children, having already helped Pride with a delivery, a quiet reminder that he has fully embraced his new life, protecting those who rely on him. Pride is astonished that Val managed to complete the task in a single day. She thanks Val for his hard work and announces that he and the kids will become the royal family's exclusive carriers. Kemen and Sefik beam with joy, and Pride reveals plans to establish a school in the country, promising them better lives if they commit to their duties. Val pledges to help her achieve this goal, accepting Pride as his master while also fulfilling his speed fetish. Meanwhile, Pride watches Arthur spar with Gilbert, but it's clear he's outmatched. Gilbert tells Stale to join the fight, but Stale refuses. Gilbert promises to teach a non-lethal technique to anyone who lands a hit on him, piquing Stale's interest. The two boys team up, launching an all-out assault, yet Gilbert effortlessly dodges and counters every attack. Val arrives on the scene, while Tiara offers the kids some cake. Sefik encourages Val and Kemen to join her, leading to a brief, awkward moment where Val accidentally grabs Pride's hand instead of Kemen's, fulfilling his hand fetish as well. As the fight continues, Pride cheers them on passionately. She tells Stale that he's smart, cool, and a brother she's proud to have, and reminds Arthur that he's a spectacular knight capable of defeating anyone. Her words inspire the boys, who charge at Gilbert with renewed vigor and finally land a hit. Whole anime summed up. Exhausted but determined, Arthur reflects on his earlier shortcomings during the human trafficker mission, realizing he has grown thanks to Stale's example of protecting everyone. Pride praises both boys, wiping Arthur's and Stale's faces affectionately, and marvels at how admirable they've become. They vow to protect Tiara, the people, and Pride herself, filling her with happiness. Pride contemplates everything she's endured, understanding that her journey is just beginning and that she could still become the final boss in her own story. With resolve, she commits to doing everything she can to protect all that's important to her. And that's where this chapter of the story ends. Let me know in the comments if you want to see part 2 of this video. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.